I wanted huge arms. When I first started training, if I could pick any body part that I wanted to grow more than any other, it was always arms. Biceps specifically. Why? No explanation needed. You can never have biceps too big. And today, I can confidently say that arms are definitely my most dominant body part, but it wasn't always that way. I started my bodybuilding journey with arms that measured 12 inches fully flexed and pumped. And growing them, honestly, wasn't easy. In fact, there were actually many years where I would spend literally just spinning my wheels. But going from 12-inch arms to 16-inch arms was actually a huge accomplishment for me early on in my career. And it was a feat that took 4 years in and itself to accomplish. But going from 16 inches flexed to now my current measurements of 19.5 inches flexed and fully pumped. Now that was a grind. And the first time that I actually broke 19 inches on the measuring tape, I was already 15 years deep into training. And at year 20 or 21 of training now, I don't know, man, it's been a long time. I can definitely say I did a lot of shit wrong, but I learned from those mistakes. I corrected them, and I got to where I am today as a result. But it didn't need to take that long, and I didn't need to waste years of training to get the job done. And today, I'm gonna cover everything that I did wrong training biceps over the years. Learn from my mistakes, implement what works, and shorten the time it takes for you to get to your goal. So let's start with the first thing that was a huge mistake. In no particular order, the first thing is simply not training biceps often enough. When I first started training, I quickly fell into the mindset that most muscle groups need a full week to recover. Keep in mind, I started training in 2003, and most of the workouts people followed at the time were something you'd find in Flex magazine. You might have gotten some information off an article written online, but needless to say, everyone in gym trained with a typical bro split. So at that time, for me, everything got trained once per week. And what I'd find doing this over the years was, every time I trained, if it was a bigger muscle group, something like chest, let's say, I'd get sore maybe 3 or 4 days. And if I trained really hard, I might have lingering soreness up to 5 or even 6 days later. At the same time, I'd literally destroy my legs to the point where I couldn't just walk out of the gym without laying down first. And as a result, my quads would be crippled for a full week after. But I'll tell you what, no matter how hard I trained biceps, I'm talking about doing upwards of 10, 15, or 20 sets in a session, all near failure, many times even using intensity techniques. My biceps, they might have been sore for a day max. And then they would literally just feel like they're sitting around doing nothing for the next 5 to 6 days before waiting to train them again. And no matter how hard I was training them at the time, no matter how many sets I was doing, no matter what intensity techniques I was implementing, they just weren't growing. And like I mentioned, they just got stuck sitting at 16 inches from 2006 to 2009. They just weren't growing. That was not a fun time. Now, when I started competing in bodybuilding around 2009, that's when I started implementing a lot of the things I learned from old school bodybuilders. Most guys were hitting body parts twice per week, sometimes even more. There was not a lot of failure training being done, and generally a moderate amount of volume and frequency. When I started implementing that in my own training, what do you know? I went from hitting biceps once per week to twice per week, and I started bringing most of my sets about 1 rep shy of failure. As a result, my arms grew from 16 inches to 18 inches from a time period from 2009, 2010 to 2011. And that was it. I changed nothing else other than the frequency of how often I hit my arms, and they grew 2 inches. Again, after being stuck in a plateau for 4 years. And to this day, I never train arms less frequently than twice per week. And I doubt I'll ever go back to low frequency training, especially when it comes to arms. Now, if you want to go squat till you puke, if you want to hammer your legs in 1 single session a week, and you want to use lower frequency for leg training, let's say, can you grow like that? Yeah, possibly, as your training sessions are going to be extremely taxing. And with exercises like squats and deadlifts, you're placing such a demand on the quads and hamstrings, especially if you're training with super heavy weights and you're a more advanced lifter. But your biceps, it's just not a muscle that could even be compared to something like the quads. So why train them the same way? I've been in the gym 20 plus years. I don't know anyone who cannot get a productive workout in 3 or 4 days later after training biceps. So if they are a body part that you need to bring up, why wait any longer than you need to if they're ready to go again? Now, number 2. Just as important, I was focusing on exercises that feel good in the target muscle versus what I should have been doing, focusing on exercises that placed a lot of tension on the target muscle. Now, this is where words can become confusing. Most guys think if I feel an exercise in the target muscle, that's a good thing, right? But feeling, it's just a sensation. Now, tension, That's a specific feeling. For example, I can flex and squeeze my biceps really hard by hitting a front double bicep pose. In fact, due to the strong mind-muscle connection I've developed over the years, I can really feel my biceps while flexing, even with no weights. But you know that's not going to build any muscle. And over the years, I was guilty of doing things like concentration curls, using some machines in my training, and even doing things like crucifix curls. You know, that exercise you always see the guys in the gym doing with 2 cable stacks. And don't get me wrong, I felt them, but no matter how hard I trained these exercises, when the session was over, there might be blood in the muscle, but I didn't feel that same level of fatigue placed on the muscle that I would then need to recover from in order to grow. However, when I started going back to things like barbell curls and dumbbell curls, and I wasn't really focusing on trying to flex the biceps or squeeze the muscle, and I just took the biceps through a full range of motion with heavy weights, and I pushed those sets as hard as I could within reason, I found that as those sets progressed closer to failure, tension on the biceps was so high that after every set, the amount of blood, the amount of lactic acid, the burning and the fatigue that set in after just one single set like that was actually greater than the entire fluff and pump workouts that I was doing prior. That's when I completely revamped my training. I first started doing a ton of easy bar preacher curls. That's a really easy exercise to take the biceps through a full range of motion near failure with good technique. But I almost never do that exercise anymore these days as I'm a bit older with a bit more wear and tear, and there are a few better, more comfortable options to use. But it is one that I do have to give credit to, as I attribute most of my bicep growth in the intermediate stages of my training to that specific exercise. And in addition, I started doing more basic barbell curls, alternating dumbbell curls, and a straight bar cable curl. When I started doing these exercises, and I stopped thinking about flexing and squeezing the bicep, and instead started thinking of these exercises as tools that place the most amount of tension on the target muscle, tools that I could use to take the muscle as close to failure as possible, what do you know? I actually got better mind-muscle connection as a result. And of course, my biceps grew like never before. So how does this apply to you? Number one, I want you to stop worrying about overtraining. I want you to stop worrying about what science says is optimal. All that you need to know about bicep training when it comes to frequency, especially if they're a body part that you need to bring up, your goal should be to train them as often as you can recover. Throw out arbitrary numbers. The more frequently you hit a muscle group that you're trying to bring up, the more it's going to grow every year. Again, provided you're recovering from those sessions. If right now you're training biceps once a week, that's approximately 52 sessions per year. If you can recover enough to train biceps, let's say twice per week, that's now over 100 workouts dedicated to biceps per year. Now, provided you're recovering from both, which do you think is going to grow your arms more? So whatever that number is for you, if you can recover to hit them again in 3 or 4 days, train your biceps twice a week. If you're a stronger, more advanced lifter and your workouts are super intense and you find that you might need 5 days to recover, train biceps every 5th day. Whenever they're recovered, that's when you train them again. Now, regarding exercises, most people go by studies or whatever the latest trending exercise is online. If someone now says behind the back cable curls grow the biceps the best, everyone jumps on the bandwagon and they think, now that I'm doing this optimal exercise, my biceps are going to grow better. Pick an exercise. The more simple, the better. Grab a barbell, dumbbell, or cable, train your biceps through a full range of motion, take that set as close to failure as you can with good form, and if your biceps are screaming in pain after the set, there's a lot of blood in the muscle, and you feel a great amount of tension on the biceps, especially as you're going for those last reps. And after the set, you feel a deep amount of fatigue set in, that's a movement that you should keep in your training long term. For me, that was always barbell curls and dumbbell curls. Honorable mentions goes to preacher curls and cable curls. But I'm talking about 90% of my training over the last 20 years being 2 to 3 exercises max. And again, that's what took me from 12-inch arms to 19.5-inch arms. All that as a result from a barbell and dumbbell or cable occasionally. So really, how fancy do you think you need to get with your exercises? Start implementing these tips into your training today. And better yet, cut out all the mistakes that I made so that you get to your goals faster than me. And if you want the training programs that I personally recommend to build more muscle using proven old school bodybuilding methods, all my old school mass game programs are down below. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.